I mean, what an extraordinary week it's been. 40% of Conservative MPs voting to say they've had no confidence in their Prime Minister. Do you think Keir Starmer missed a bit of a trick at Prime Minister's questions at not really pushing that?
No, I thought that Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's questions today actually pushed the reality that people are facing in the NHS in England, unable to get a GP appointment, the waits at A&E, the cancer waiting lists that have been going up over the past 12 years. And that's the reality people are facing. And we have a government now that isn't dealing with those issues. What we've seen this week is a government in absolute chaos. We have 148 Conservative MPs who agree with us as an opposition that they've no confidence whatsoever in the Prime Minister. Then you've got 211 Conservative MPs who are saying that the Prime Minister's law-breaking, the Prime Minister's contempt for people's sacrifices during the pandemic is an acceptable thing that they can support. What you now have is a divided Conservative Party that isn't going to be able to tackle the challenges of the country.
Do you think, though, I mean, Boris Johnson argues that, look, he's got the vote out of the way, he's drawn a line under it, he's got a majority, and actually, you know, even if you speak to the most fierce critics, like Tim Loughton, who we just had on the programme, they seem to accept the result. Do you think that he's now going to lead the Conservatives into the next election?
Whether the Prime Minister leads the Conservatives into the next election or not, we will be making the case that we've had 12 years of Conservative failure. And looking at it from the opposition benches this week, let's not hide from what's happened here. A majority of the Conservative MPs has voted to support this Prime Minister. This is a Prime Minister whose focus is on saving himself. This is a government. We saw a document Conservative MPs had put around saying that the purpose of this government is actually to keep the Prime Minister in office. They are not focused on the problems.
I mean, to be fair, they would say that, you know, in just the last few weeks, they have launched a bumper package to help with the cost of living, going further than the Labour Party would have done with the windfall tax and on energy bills. So, you know, it's not right to say that they're not doing anything, is it?
The Conservative Party has been in power for 12 years, is tired and out of ideas. It's Labour that's made the political weather. It's the windfall tax proposal that we actually pushed for months and months. And if, by the way, they'd adopted it 5 months ago, nearly 6 months ago, when we first spoke about it, people would have been in a much better position now. They are out of ideas, and this is a tired government.
Now, on the 21st of June, we're expecting strikes on the trains, on the underground network. The RMT say that it's going to be the biggest outbreak of industrial action in the UK since 1989. Do you back the strikes?
What I would like to see is a resolution to this. Nobody ever wants to see strikes. Nobody wants to see workers in a position of making those sacrifices. Nobody wants to see the disruption that this is going to cause to the public. And what we need to see...
Just to come in, though, because, I mean, no one would disagree that you want to see a resolution. The question is, you know, where do you get that resolution? If you can't reach one, would you like strikes? So do you back strikes under the current situation?
What I want to see is more dialogue. We've seen the 3 dates that the RMT has spoken about. There is still absolutely time for dialogue. That dialogue has to take place. And we can't have either government ministers somehow washing their hands of responsibility about this.
So more dialogue, does that mean that the RMT should pause the strikes in favour of more dialogue? Is that what you're saying?
But there is still time available. We're not right up against, at the moment, the date that the RMT is saying, I think it's the 21st of June is the first date that they're talking about. There is time for dialogue. We need to get all the parties around the table. And it needs to be the government, by the way, not distracted permanently as they are by their own internal problems, who actually take some responsibility for facilitating these talks and preventing that strikes from happening.
I spoke to the RMT's Mick Lynch on the Sunday programme a couple of weeks ago. He said, I've seen no response from the Labour front bench that says we support the workers in their struggles. If we just get this bland Democratic Party sitting in the centre of politics, taking their instructions off the Daily Mail to some extent and not actually getting behind workers' struggles, you have to ask yourself, why do they actually call themselves the Labour Party? Well,
I don't agree with that interpretation. We are on the side of working people up and down the country, whether they're working in the rail industry, whether they are in the wider public, working in many other industries. What we need to see is an actual cost of living package. We need an emergency budget. We shouldn't be having the national insurance increase that we're having at the moment.
Can you see why Mick Lynch thinks that the Labour Party is a bit bland? If you just say, oh, yeah, we want more dialogue, but it feels like you're not really giving a definitive answer on what you feel about the strikes.
No, I fundamentally disagree, because I think strike action is always difficult and dialogue is the only way that you find a solution. So that's why I'm urging that dialogue in those particular circumstances. But I don't accept at all that what we said about the cost of living is somehow bland. It's our campaigning on the windfall tax that's caused the government to actually have to adopt our policy. We are the ones calling for an emergency budget, saying there shouldn't be the national insurance increase. We're the ones who are talking about investing, a climate investment pledge, £28 billion each year, insulating homes up and down the country. We are the party that is putting those ideas forward.
Do you support the government's package on the cost of living?
We've been very clear on things like where the Chancellor actually reduced fuel duty, that, of course, those are things that we would support. But the idea that what the Chancellor has put forward is sufficient for what everybody out there is actually facing, I'm afraid, is for the birds. It isn't. And what the Chancellor has had to do already is to come back when we pushed him to do so. He should come back again with an emergency budget.
But with what in the emergency budget? What specifically would you like to see?
Right, well, first of all, let's see the reversal of the national insurance increase. Let's see the Chancellor of the Exchequer take away VAT on energy, for example, is another thing that the Chancellor could do. And let's see the Chancellor as well, for once, actually have a long-term plan for tackling growth. In the 10 years before the pandemic, the average growth per year was running at below 2%. There needs to be a strategy for growth. And in my area of international trade, by the way, we see the government rushing to complete initial trade deals. But what they're not doing, and I see it because I'm out there visiting exporters on the front line, they're not providing the support to businesses and to exporters that they need to actually be able to make those trade deals work for communities up and down the country.
OK, thank you very much for being on the show today. Nick, Thomas-Symonds there.